The wheelchair's front casters hit the bottom of the ramp with a hollow clack that I felt in my teeth. The air outside the base clinic was thick with exhaust and summer heat, smelling like hot asphalt, and the faint medicinal tang that seeped out every time the automatic doors hissed open behind us. People flowed around us. Uniforms, civilians, base visitors, parting and rejoining like water around a rock. None of them stopped. "Almost there, sir," I said, boots braced on the concrete. The man in the chair didn't answer. His hands were folded on a blanket over his knees, knuckles knotted with age. One of his sleeves was neatly pinned where an arm should have been. The other hand gripped a small object so tight his skin blanched around it. A round of metal, worn edges glinting. A coin. He'd waved off the volunteer at the clinic door, insisted he could manage on his own. He had gotten exactly one wheel stuck in the small crack at the base of the ramp before his shoulders sagged. I had watched it happen from 30 yards away. Paperwork folder under my arm, brain already rehearsing the rest of my morning. Supply forms, leave chits, another round of signatures I got for people and never for myself. I could have kept walking. Everyone else did. Instead, I veered. "Let me help you, sir," I said, fingers closing around the cool handles at the back of the chair before he could argue. His head turned slightly, gray stubble catching the light. "You don't have to," he said. His voice was rough, like it had been sanded down by years of salt air and shouting over engines. "I know," I said. "Push anyway." The ramp wasn't steep, but whoever had designed it had not been thinking about August heat on a Navy base, or the way a man in a wheelchair might feel every inch of an incline in his bones. My shoulders burned. Sweat slid down my spine under my uniform blouse. The folder dug into my ribs. The rubber tires squeaked in protest with each shove. Halfway up, a group of officers passed by, their conversation floating on the hot air. "Harper's in a mood today." "No, the Admiral doesn't forget something like that. 40 years and he's still—" The words cut off as they noticed us, their steps quickening. I kept pushing. At the top of the ramp, the chair jolted back onto level ground. The man's shoulders dropped, just a fraction. He let out a breath that sounded like a tire losing air. "Thank you," he said. He didn't look at me when he said it. His gaze stayed fixed on the entrance doors, the coin still clenched in his hand. It caught the sun for a second, brass or something like it, with an anchor etched deep into one side. "You're welcome," I said. I could have tilted my head, caught the inscription. I could have asked his name, his rate, his ship. That's what you're supposed to do with older vets. File them into your mental roster of people who did more than me. Instead, my watch buzzed. 08:59. The admin office expected me planted at my desk by 0900 with a smile and a working printer. "I've got to run," I said. "You need someone to wheel you back later, just ask at the desk inside. They'll find you a Lieutenant Hart-level sucker again." I tried to make it a joke. It came out clumsy. He turned his head enough that I could see one eye, sharp and pale. "Hart?" he repeated. "That your name, petty officer?" The way he said it made something tighten behind my ribs. "Yes, sir," I said. "Maya Hart." His gaze flickered. For a second, the hand around the coin loosened. "Hart," he murmured. "Well, I'll be damned." Before I could ask what that meant, the clinic doors slid open and a corpsman stepped out, all efficient concern. "Mr. Bellamy," she said, "you're right on time. Let's get you inside." Bellamy. The name slotted into my brain and then slid away, filed with 100 others I touched on paper every day and never really saw. I let go of the chair. "Take care, sir," I said. He gave a small nod. No more words. The doors closed behind them with a soft whoosh, leaving me on the sidewalk with my sweat, my paperwork, and the smell of antiseptic. I wiped my palms on my skirt, shifted the folder under my arm, and walked away. Just another morning at Norfolk. By day 3, I had almost forgotten him. The base ground on as it always did. Printers jammed, chiefs shouted. Young sailors lined up outside my office door with leave forms, travel chits, and panic in their eyes. Hart, can you check my eval? I think they forgot a line. Hart, my BAH is screwed up. Housing says they never got the paperwork. Hart, sorry, but they told me you're the wizard. I wasn't a wizard. I just knew how to read instructions, how to find the right form, how to check the box that meant the difference between approved and lost in the system. My entire day was spent putting other people's names in the right places, so the Navy could keep pretending it ran on time. My own name rarely showed up anywhere except my email signature and the rotating duty roster. It didn't bother me. Not really. Dad had taught me early, before the heart attack took him at 39 and left us ricocheting between bases in his wake, that the quiet work kept the loud work from falling apart. It's like running lines on a ship, he'd say, grease on his hands, sweat in his hair, the smell of salt and diesel around us. Nobody claps when you do it right, but you feel it real fast when someone skips a knot. I kept knots tied. Now I kept signatures straight. Same idea, less ocean. It was just past 1600 when the shout came down the admin hallway. Hart! I flinched, the staple I was lining up going crooked. Chief Mendez stuck his head around my cubicle divider, the fluorescent light catching on the silver in his hair. In my office, he said. Now. He didn't sound angry. That somehow made it worse. I smoothed my blouse, wiped an ink smudge from my thumb, and followed him into his small, cluttered office. The air was warmer in here, thick with the smell of burned coffee and the faint tang of shoe polish. Captain Weller, our department head, stood by the file cabinet. Her jaw was tight. What's going on, ma'am? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. She studied my face like she was trying to match it to a description that didn't fit. You had business in the hospital wing on Monday? She asked finally. Yes, ma'am, I said. Dropped off some medical waivers for legal. She tapped a folder on the desk. And while you were there, you assisted a visitor, she added. I frowned. I helped an older veteran up the ramp, I said. He had a wheelchair. It got stuck. Why? She and Mendez traded a look. Do you know who he was? She asked. Name tag said Bellamy, I said. That's all. Mendez gave a low whistle. Kudos, Hart, he said under his breath. For what? I asked. Gravity? Weller's lips twitched despite herself. The veteran you assisted, she said, has lodged a formal statement with the base commander's office regarding your conduct. My stomach sank. A complaint? I blurted. Ma'am, I swear I didn't— A commendation, she cut in. I blinked. Oh. She opened the folder, slid a printed memo across the desk toward me. I read the first line. From Bellamy Samuel J., USN retired, to Admiral Richard Harper, ComNav Base. Subject, Recommendation for Commendation, PO2 Maya Hart. The words blurred slightly. I swallowed and kept reading. Petty Officer Hart was the only service member present who saw fit to assist a disabled veteran in a wheelchair at the clinic ramp. Did so without prompting, without expectation of recognition, and with a cheerfulness that belied the heat and her own schedule. If this is the quality of sailor our Navy still produces, maybe the sacrifices of the past weren't wasted. The last line made my throat feel tight. Ma'am, I said, voice low, I didn't do anything special. That's exactly what he wrote, Weller said, and exactly why the Admiral took notice. I looked up, startled. The Admiral read this? Mendez chuckled. Hart, when Sam Bellamy writes a memo, anybody with a star on their collar reads it. I blinked again. Sir? I asked. I thought he was just some old guy in a chair? Mendez finished. Yeah, Sam Bellamy. Served before you were born. Old stories say he was there for one of the ugliest cluster. He caught Weller's look. Incidents this base ever buried. The kind of operation that never made it to any official plaque, Weller added quietly. You won't find it in your admin files. I shifted my weight, the thin carpet soft under my boots. Why is the Admiral involved? I asked. Because Bellamy sent his memo straight to him, Weller said. And because your last name is Hart. The room seemed to tilt. Hart? I repeated. My own name sounded strange in my ears. Admiral Harper was Paul Hart's XO once, Mendez said. Way back when. Before everything. Everything. That was how my family always referred to Dad's last deployment, the one that ended with a folded flag and a relocation packet. No specifics, just a blank, labeled with one heavy word. I cleared my throat. Ma'am, I said carefully, with respect, there have been a lot of Harts in the Navy. True, Weller said, but there was only one Hart on that mission. And only one Hart who died on this base's watch with more questions than answers. She closed the folder. The Admiral has requested. She stopped, shook her head. Has ordered you to report to his office at 0800 tomorrow. My stomach did a slow, unpleasant flip. Did I do something wrong? I asked. If you did, Mendez said, it was pushing a chair up a ramp too well. Weller's mouth softened. You did your job as a human being, she said. Now the Admiral wants to talk. The word carried weight. Paper rustled in my hands. The overhead lights hummed. The faint smell of burned coffee clung to my nose. My father had been dead for more than 15 years. I had enlisted partly to feel closer to the life he'd lived, partly because paperwork was easier than grief. I'd learned how to tuck his memory into a neat mental file. Good dad, hard worker, died on duty, do not touch. Now a man with 4 stars on his collar wanted to open that file without warning. Understood, ma'am, I said. Weller nodded, satisfied. Dismissed, she said. I stepped back into the hallway. Everything looked the same scuffed floors, the same bulletin boards with outdated flyers, the same faint buzz of conversation from cubicles. But the ground felt different under my feet. As I walked back to my desk, a sailor nearly barreled into me, eyes on his phone. I sidestepped automatically, folder tight in my hand. On the memo, Bellamy's words echoed in my head. Maybe the sacrifices of the past weren't wasted. I'd spent my entire adult life assuming my father's death was just that, a waste. A wrong place, wrong time footnote. Now I had an admiral, a veteran with one arm, and a formal memo telling me 2 things I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. 1, somebody had been watching. 2, my last name meant more to this base than I ever realized. The next morning, when I stood in front of Admiral Harper's office door, palms damp, heart beating too fast, the memory that kept replaying wasn't of Dad in his dress whites or Mom folding the flag. It was the feel of the wheelchair handles under my hands, the heat of the ramp, and the flash of metal as Sam Bellamy's coin caught the sun. I knocked. Enter, a voice barked. The door swung open on its heavy hinge, and I stepped into the cool, dim office of a man who commanded half the coastline. Admiral Richard Harper stood behind his desk, rows of ribbons on his chest, the light from the window carving lines into his weathered face. His gaze landed on my name tape and stayed there. Hart, he said, not a question. Sir, I replied, coming to attention. For a second, his jaw worked like it wanted to say something and had forgotten how. Then he rounded the desk, his usually iron-stiff posture thrown off by a barely noticeable hitch in his step. He stopped a foot from me. When Sam Bellamy sent me that memo, he said, voice low and not as steady as I expected, "Your name was the last one I expected to see." My spine snapped even straighter. "Sir?" I managed. He looked at me like he was seeing a ghost and a mirror at the same time. "Because the last time a heart saved one of us," he said, "we let the record say the opposite." He walked back to his desk, picked up a worn, corner-wrinkled photograph, and turned it so I could see. 3 men, one young, with Harper's jaw and fewer lines, one with Sam Bellamy's eyes and 2 arms, and one in the middle, grinning into the sun, uniform collar open, a coin in his hand. My father, Paul Hart. The photo trembled slightly in the Admiral's fingers. "Sit down, petty officer," he said. His voice was different now, softer, determined. "It's time someone told you who your father really was." I sat because my knees didn't trust themselves. The chair in front of the Admiral's desk was stiffer than it looked, the vinyl cold through my uniform skirt. The air in his office smelled like old paper and furniture polish, with a faint undertone of coffee gone bitter on a warmer. Admiral Harper didn't sit right away. He stood by the window for a moment, the morning light outlining the edges of his uniform, the rows of ribbons on his chest, a dense splash of color against dark blue. One hand gripped the photo so tight the edges bowed. "I've owed the name Hart something for 40 years, he said. My pulse hammered. "I grew up on that name, sir," I said carefully. But nobody ever used the word owed with it. He glanced back at me, studying my face again like he was overlaying it with younger memories. "You look like him," he said. "Not the jaw, the eyes. Same way he watched a room and pretended he wasn't." He moved back behind the desk and finally sat, the big leather chair creaking softly. The photo lay between us. In it, my father's grin seemed to split the frame. Sunlight caught on the round shape in his fingers. A coin, just like the one Bellamy had clenched on the ramp. I couldn't reach for the picture. My hands stayed flat on my knees. "Sir," I said. All I ever got was the official line. "Training accident, classified. Your father died serving his country." That's it. He exhaled slowly, shoulders dropping a fraction. "That's not a lie," he said. "It's just about 15% of the truth." Heat rose in my chest, tightening my throat. "Then what's the other 85? I asked. He tapped the photograph with one blunt finger. "Operation Breakwater," he said. "South Atlantic. On paper, a routine escort mission. In reality, a mess of politics and nerves with 3 ships in a corridor nobody wanted to admit we were using." The words tasted like classified ink. "I've never seen that in any file," I said. "You won't," he replied. "The mission got buried so deep they probably paved a parking lot over the records." He leaned back, eyes unfocusing slightly, gaze drifting to some horizon only he could see. "Your father was a chief then," he said. "Paul Hart, engineering. Best damned problem solver I ever saw. Could coax life out of a dead engine with duct tape and profanity." A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "Sam Bellamy was security," he added. "I was the junior officer on the totem pole. Still thought medals meant you'd done something right instead of just not dying in the wrong place." His fingers drifted to his own rack of ribbons, then stopped. "We were 3 days into the transit when we picked up a stray contact," he said. "Something that shouldn't have been there. Wrong flag, wrong time. Command panicked. Gave us 6 different orders in 5 minutes. All mutually exclusive." I could picture it. Steel corridors, alarms, the smell of metal heating under strain. Your father made a call, Harper said. He followed the order that kept people alive instead of the one that kept careers clean. What did he do? I asked. He looked at me. He killed the lights, Harper said. Took us dark, cut every non-essential system, and parked us in a patch of water that looked empty to anyone who wasn't inside our hull. He paused. Problem was, there were 2 ships depending on us for guidance. He went on. They lost our signal, got confused, and one of them drifted too close to the contact. His jaw tightened. There was a collision, he said. Not catastrophic, but bad. Fire, injuries, 2 men lost overboard before we could get back up and into position. It all happened in minutes. The clock on his wall ticked, loud in the quiet. Command needed someone to blame, he said. They could hardly admit they'd been shouting 6 sets of orders down the line at once, so they looked at the man who'd flipped the switches. My palms went clammy. Dad, I said. He nodded. He wrote up a report that said exactly what he'd done and why, Harper said. Said the risk of being seen was higher than the risk of losing contact for 60 seconds. Said he'd do it again. And? I asked. And the brass lost their minds, he said flatly. On paper, they gave him a reprimand for unauthorized systems shutdown. Off the record, they leaned on him. Hard. Tried to get him to sign a version that took all the blame, cleared everyone above him, made it seem like his improvisation had caused everything. I felt my nails dig crescents into my palms. He refused? I said. Twice, Harper said. Then they played their last card. He looked down at the photo, thumb brushing my father's grin. They called him into a room and laid out 3 files, he said. His, mine, Bellamy's. They told him if he signed the statement taking sole responsibility, we'd get to keep our careers. Our families would keep their benefits. The mission would vanish into a sealed box marked regrettable. My chest constricted. What if he didn't sign? I asked. Then the inquiry would name all 3 of us negligent, Harper said. Sam would lose his pension. I'd be done before I even started. Your father's record would be a cautionary tale instead of something complicated. He let the implication hang. I swallowed hard. What did he do? I asked. Harper's voice went quieter. He asked for the files, he said. Read them. Read his, read mine, read Sam's. Then he signed the version that made him look like the only idiot in the room. My eyes stung. Why? I whispered, even though I already knew the answer. Because your mother was pregnant, he said. Because he'd watched Sam send paychecks home to a family that depended on him. Because I was too young and too stupid to recognize when I was being set up. Because the idea of us losing everything made him sicker than the idea of the world thinking he'd screwed up. He looked at me, eyes steady. He traded his reputation for our futures, Harper said. That's the kind of man your father was. The room seemed to tilt. I'd grown up with the unspoken assumption that my father had messed up, that whatever had happened had been his fault enough that nobody wanted to explain it. Now the floor had suddenly dropped out from under that story. What did you do? I asked. The words came out sharper than I intended. After he signed. Harper's jaw clenched. I accepted the version of events that kept my career alive, he said. I went along with the lie. I watched him carry it. I watched your family get reassigned and reshuffled. Then he died before anyone could fix it. Guilt flickered across his face, quick and unvarnished. I told myself I'd set the record straight someday, he said, when it was safe, when it wouldn't hurt the Navy, when we were past it. He gave a short, bitter laugh. Funny thing about someday, he added. It stretches. 40 years if you let it. The office felt too small for the weight hanging between us. His guilt, my father's choice, the long shadow it had cast over my entire life. What about Mom? I asked. Did she know? She knew enough, he said. Your father told her more in his last letter than he was supposed to. She chose to protect you from the details. He nodded toward a framed photo on his shelf. A black-clad funeral crowd, a flag, a little girl clinging to a woman's hand. Me. She wrote me once, he said, after the funeral. Said, whatever happened, I hope you're making his sacrifice worth something. The air in my lungs burned. You didn't answer? I asked. I wrote a lot of drafts, he said. None of them honest enough to send. He picked up the old photograph and slid it across the desk toward me at last. Up close, my father's face almost hurt to look at. He looked so alive it was like the air between us might spark. He wore a service pin on his collar. The coin in his hand had the same deep-etched anchor I'd seen glint in Bellamy's fist at the ramp. He used to flip that damned coin whenever he was thinking, Harper said softly. Drove me crazy. Bellamy had it yesterday, I murmured. On the ramp. Harper nodded. He kept it, he said. All these years. When he saw your name on the clinic sign-in, he nearly broke the nurse's desk, grabbing a memo form. I traced the outline of the coin in the photo with my eyes, not daring to touch the paper for fear my fingers would shake. So that's why you said my name was the last you expected to hear, I said. You thought the Navy had finished with Hearts. I thought we'd failed you beyond repair, he said. That the damage was done, the story written. He held my gaze. Then I read Bellamy's words, he continued, about you stopping on a hot morning to push a stubborn old sailor up a ramp no one else wanted to bother with. No cameras, no applause, no idea who he was. You did what your father always did. You moved toward the hard thing without asking if it would pay off. My throat closed. It was just a ramp, sir, I said. Anyone would have... No, he cut in gently. They didn't. You did. And that told me something important. He folded his hands on the desk. The heart line didn't end in that sealed file, he said. It's here. It's you. Same spine, same quiet. Same instinct to lift weight that isn't strictly yours. The words pressed on me from all sides. Anger, pride, grief. They tangled in my chest until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. So now what? I asked. You tell me a story that's 40 years too late, and we both go back to our desks? He shook his head. No, he said. I'm done hiding behind sealed records and someday. Bellamy's memo forced my hand. Your kindness did. He reached into a drawer, pulled out a thin, worn folder with a yellowing edge. It looked older than me. There was no label on the tab. Just a small, faded sticker with that same deep-etched anchor and the ghost of a serial number. For 40 years, this sat in a safe I walked past every day, he said. Original draft of your father's report. The one he wrote before they corrected it. He slid it toward me. My fingers hovered, then landed on the cardboard, the texture rough under my skin. You're clearing it? I asked, shocked. Sir, that will upset people, he said. Good. Some people need upsetting. He leaned in slightly. I'm recommending a posthumous valor citation for Chief Paul Hart, he said. Correcting the record. Restoring his name. Making sure the next kid who walks past the memorial wall doesn't think he was just another cautionary tale. My heart stumbled. "You can do that?" I whispered. "I can start it," he said. "But it means opening files, admitting mistakes, stamping 'We were wrong' on a chapter the Navy preferred to forget. I should have done it a long time ago." I didn't. He nodded toward the photo still in my hands. "Your father bought my career with his name," he said. "I'm cashing that debt in the only way I can now." Silence thrummed in my ears. The clock ticked. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rang and was quickly answered. "Why tell me?" I asked. "Why not just quietly fix it and let us find out when the plaques change?" He studied me. "Because this started with you," he said simply. "With a ramp and a wheelchair and a name tag you didn't recognize. Because you deserve to walk into our records room and see your father's truth for yourself, not filter it through my guilt." He let that sink in, then added, almost as an afterthought, "And because Bellamy refused to sign anything until I promised you'd be there." I blinked. "Be where?" I asked. Harper's mouth curved in something that was almost a smile and almost a wince. "At the recognition," he said. "If the board approves the citation, we're going to pin your father's medal on you. Quietly. No parade. Just the people who were there and the people who should have been told a long time ago." His gaze held mine. "That includes you, Petty Officer Hart," he said, "whether you think you earned it or not." My fingers tightened on the folder. "In the meantime," he added, "Sam Bellamy has requested a visitor. He says he's got stories your mother couldn't bring herself to tell you." The room seemed to shrink to that one sentence. "Stories?" I asked. My voice sounded thin to my own ears. "About who your father was between the lines of his record," Harper said. "About coins and corridors and all the little acts of decency nobody logged." He stood. "So," he said, "you have a choice." He gestured toward the photo, the folder, the office door. "You can leave this here," he said. "Let me handle it. Go back to your desk and keep pushing other people's paperwork up ramps they can't even see." He nodded toward the hallway beyond. "Or you can pick that folder up," he went on. "Walk across base to the hospital wing and let an old one-armed sailor tell you who your father was while you still have the chance to hear it from someone who remembers the sound of his voice." The air tasted like paper and something older, dust off a door that had stayed closed too long. The folder under my hand felt heavier than any stack of chits I'd ever carried. I thought of Dad's laugh, of Mom's careful, edited stories, of the way my last name had always felt like a question I wasn't allowed to ask. I slid the folder off the desk and into my hands. The cardboard rasped softly. "I'll go to the hospital," I said. Harper's shoulders eased. "Good," he said. "Tell him I said I'm coming too." "Sir?" I asked. "For once," he said, "I'm not letting a heart carry this weight alone." I stood, folder tucked tight against my ribs, the edges pressing into my palms like a new kind of ramp. The office door felt heavier on the way out. In the hallway, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The air smelled faintly of coffee and floor polish. Sailors moved around me, paperwork in hand, conversations buzzing. I turned toward the clinic. Every step felt like I was walking out of the life I'd built on half a story and into the part my father had left unfinished. At the base of the ramp, sunlight glared off the metal rail, the same way it had the day I'd pushed Bellamy up. My hands twitched, remembering the strain. This time, I didn't stop at the bottom. I climbed. At the top, with the automatic doors ahead and the folder hot under my arm, it hit me. The act that had started all this, a simple push up a ramp, had been the smallest thing I'd done all week. Now it was about to drag decades of buried truth into the light. The clinic always smelled like bleach and old air. Inside, the temperature dropped 10 degrees. My skin pebbled under my sleeves, a thin film of sweat cooling too fast. The automatic doors sighed shut behind me with a soft whoosh, cutting off the hum of the bass outside. I checked in at the front desk, folder clutched like it might bolt. "Petty Officer Hart?" I said. "Looking for Mr. Bellamy, Samuel." The corpsman on duty glanced at the screen, then at me. Something flickered in her expression. Curiosity, maybe recognition. "Room 214, she said. "He's been asking if a stubborn Hart showed up yet." My stomach did a small, startled flip. "Right," I said. "Thanks." The hallway was quiet. The kind of quiet you only get in military medical spaces. Heavy, practical. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. My boots squeaked faintly on the polished linoleum. Outside 214, I paused. The door was slightly ajar. Voices drifted through the narrow gap. "Told you," a rough voice said. "She's got the walk, same as him." "I'll make my own assessment, Sam," Harper replied. "You're not the only one with memories." I blinked, then knocked gently. "Come," came the Admiral's voice. I pushed the door open. The room was small, more functional than comforting. One hospital bed, one chair, a narrow window that looked out over the parking lot. The faint chemical smell was threaded with something warmer, instant coffee and the faint iron tang of age. Sam Bellamy sat propped up in the bed, blanket over his legs, hospital gown peeking from under an old navy hoodie. The empty sleeve of his right side was pinned neatly. His left hand still clutched that coin. Admiral Harper stood by the window, cover under his arm. He didn't look like a 4-star here. He looked like a tired man in a uniform, shoulders carrying more than weight. Bellamy's face broke into a crooked grin when he saw me. "There she is," he said. "I was starting to think you had more sense than your father." Harper's eyes tracked to me, softer than they'd been in the office. "Petty Officer," he said. "Come in. Close the door." I stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind me, the sound sealing us into a little world of beeping monitors and 40-year-old ghosts. Bellamy squinted at the folder under my arm. "He tell you?" he asked. "About breakwater? About how your old man threw himself under the bus for a couple of idiots?" "Sam," Harper said warningly. Bellamy snorted. "You were an idiot, Rich. So was I. Difference is, he signed for all 3 of us." I moved closer to the bed, stopping where I could see both of their faces. "He started," I said. "He said you wanted to fill in what he'd left out." Bellamy eyed me over the curve of the coin. "You help all old fools up ramps, Hart?" he asked. "Or just the ones carrying your father's ghosts?" "Just the ones stuck," I said. Which, to be fair, was every wheel on that chair. He barked a laugh, then winced, hand going to his side. "Careful," Harper murmured. "You don't have spare ribs to crack anymore." Bellamy waved him off. "You've got his mouth, too," he said to me. "Paul never could resist poking a bear, even when the bear wore stars." I shifted the folder to my other arm. "I don't know what I've got yet," I said. "That's kind of the point." He sobered. "Right," he said. "Sit down then. I owe you a story." The visitor's chair was hard plastic, its edges biting into my thighs when I sat. The linoleum felt cold even through my boots. Harper leaned against the wall, arms crossed, staying close but giving us space. Bellamy turned the coin between his fingers, the metal catching the overhead light. It was worn smooth on one side, the deep-etched anchor on the other dulled by touch. "I met your father on a rust bucket that smelled like bad coffee and worse wiring," Bellamy said. "He showed up in engineering with a toolbox, took one look at the mess, and said, "Well, at least she's ugly enough to be honest." A chuckle escaped me, surprising us both. "That sounds like him," I said. "You remember him?" Bellamy asked. "Bits," I said. Grease on his hands. Walked like the deck was always shifting. He'd flip a coin when he was thinking. Mom hated the noise. He laughed again, softer. "That coin," Harper said quietly, nodding at Bellamy's hand. Bellamy held it up. "Same one," he said. "He flipped it that night. Once. Only time I ever saw him let fate have a say." A chill slid down my spine. "What night?" I asked. "The one Rich here just half confessed to you?" Bellamy said. "Breakwater. Lights out. 2 ships kissing in the dark when they weren't supposed to." His eyes went distant. "The impact was ugly," he said. "Not catastrophic like the Admiral said, but ugly. Men on deck thrown like rag dolls, fire licking out of a hatch. You could smell burning paint and hot metal all the way to our bow. I could almost smell it, acrid, heavy. I was on security detail," Bellamy went on. "Your dad was in engineering. Harper here was trying to play officer between 2 radios saying opposite things." He gave Harper a look that softened the sting. "We got things under control," he said. "Put out fires, hauled a couple guys back over the rail who thought the ocean wanted them more than we did. By the time the smoke settled, command was already sharpening knives." Harper's jaw worked. "You knew they were going to scapegoat him," I said. Bellamy nodded. "Paul knew it too," he said. "Didn't stop him from writing the report that would make them furious. He laid it out clean. Said, 'I had 3 options. I chose the one that kept you 2 alive. If they don't like it, they can demote me to swabbing decks.'" His mouth twisted. "Instead, they tried to erase him," Bellamy said. "Make him the fool, not the man who made the hard call under bad orders." He closed his hand around the coin again. "The day they put those 3 files on the table," he said, voice roughening. "I was there. Not in the room, outside the door. I could hear enough through the wall." He swallowed. "I heard your father say, 'What happens to them?'" he went on. Voice like he'd already decided his part didn't matter. Harper looked away, jaw muscle jumping. "The guy running the inquiry said, 'They'll be fine if you sign.'" Bellamy's mouth hardened. "He didn't say what would happen if he didn't," he said. "He didn't need to." He looked at me. "Your father flipped the coin," he said. "Once. It hit the table. I heard it. Then he said, 'Guess I was due for a bad headline anyway.' And he signed." My fingers tightened on the folder. "That's not a bad headline," I said. "That's sacrifice." Bellamy nodded. "Try telling that to the brass in their pretty offices," he said. "It was easier for them to call it negligence and move on." "And you let them," I said quietly, looking at Harper. He didn't flinch. "I did," he said. "No excuses." The honesty hurt more than any justification would have. Bellamy exhaled. "I followed him after," he said. "Caught him on the catwalk above the engine room. He was leaning on the rail, flipping that coin again." His eyes softened. "I told him he was an idiot," Bellamy said. "Said he'd thrown his whole life under the bus for a bunch of men who wouldn't remember his name." He looked at me. "You know what he said?" he asked. I shook my head, throat tight. "They don't have to remember my name," Bellamy said. "They're going to live long enough to forget this happened. That's enough." The monitor beside his bed beeped steadily. My own heartbeat felt uneven. That's who your father was, Bellamy said. Not the single line in a file. Not the cautionary tale. A man who decided other people's tomorrows mattered more than his reputation. Tears burned behind my eyes. I blinked hard. All these years, I said. I thought he'd screwed up. That whatever happened was his fault. Nobody ever said sacrifice. They just said classified and walked away. Harper's shoulders hunched, just a fraction. That's on us, he said. On me. We let your family carry the shame while we reaped the safety. Bellamy barked a humorless laugh. I carried the shame just fine on my own, he said. Asked your Admiral here every year when he was going to fix it. He always said soon. He looked at me. Took your little stunt on the ramp to kick his soon into now, he added. I swallowed a shaky breath. It was just a ramp, I said again. No, Harper said quietly. It was you, doing what your father did, moving toward someone who needed help, not because it would change anything, but because you could. Bellamy saw your name on that clipboard and nearly broke a hip getting to a memo form. Bellamy shrugged one shoulder. Couldn't believe it, he said. Heart, same base, same stubborn line of people who don't wait for orders to do the decent thing. Harper straightened. Sam and I talked, he said. We agreed on something for once. Bellamy snorted. Mark your calendar. Harper ignored him. We're done letting your father's story stay buried, he said. We're preparing a petition to upgrade that reprimand to a citation, valor, for choosing the path that saved lives under impossible conditions. My heartbeat stuttered. Sir, I said, can they even do that? After all this time? It'll be a fight, he said. Layers of bureaucracy. People who'll say it sets a bad precedent to admit we were wrong. But I have stars now, and I intend to spend them where they count. He looked at Bellamy. Sam's testimony matters, he said. He was there. He'll sign. So will I. Bellamy nodded, coin turning between his fingers again. Hell yes, I'll sign, he said. My hand's not pretty, but it still works. Harper shifted his gaze back to me. And I'd like you there, he said. When we put that recommendation forward. When we read his original report into the record. When we pin the medal that should have been on his chest onto you instead. The words felt like too much and not enough all at once. I don't deserve his medal, I said. You're not taking it for yourself, Bellamy said. You're carrying it for him, for your mother, for whatever kid walks past a wall someday and recognizes your last name. The hospital room seemed to pulse with overlapping timelines, past and present, guilt and pride. I opened the folder at last. Inside, the pages were thin with age, the typed lines faded. At the top, in block letters, Hart, Paul E., Chief Petty Officer, USN. Incident Report, Breakwater. My eyes skimmed the first paragraph. He laid it out like Harper had said. Facts, choices, consequences. No excuses, no blame shifting. Just a man describing how he'd been handed a knot of bad orders and chosen the one that wrapped around his own name instead of someone else's throat. At the bottom of the page, a signature. Bold, decisive. I ran my finger lightly under it, not quite touching the ink. I always wondered why Mom never hated the Navy, I said softly. Why she let me enlist. If they'd ruined his life, you'd think she would have tried to keep me away. She knew who he really was, Bellamy said. Not the line in the report. The man who'd flip a coin and walk into the storm no matter which side it landed on. Harper cleared his throat. She wrote me, he said again. I told you that. Asked if I was making his sacrifice worth something. He shook his head. Took me 4 decades to be able to answer yes without lying. He looked at me. I can't give him back the years or the rank, he said, but I can give his daughter the truth. and his name the place it deserved all along. Silence settled, thicker than the antiseptic tang in the air. "Why now?" I asked. "Because of the ramp?" "Because of the ramp," Bellamy said. "Because seeing you do the right thing when no one was watching made me realize we'd wasted enough time trying to fix the past from the shadows. Your old man stepped into the line of fire. It's time we did the same." Harper nodded once. "We're setting the ceremony for 2 weeks from now," he said. "Small, in the memorial courtyard. No speeches for social media, just the people who need to be there. Your mother," Bellamy added, "if she'll come." My chest clenched. "She doesn't talk about him," I said. "Not like this. I don't know how she'll—" "You let her decide what she can handle," Harper said gently. "But she deserves the option." He hesitated, then reached into his pocket. "I pulled this from our archives this morning," he said. He placed something on the tray beside Bellamy's bed. A small, dark velvet box, the kind they use for medals. It looked too clean for its age. Bellamy stared at it like it might vanish. "You kept it," he said. Harper's mouth thinned. "They made one," he said, "back when they were debating how to spin the incident. It never left the vault. I told myself I couldn't in good conscience wear mine while his sat in a dark drawer." He pushed the box toward me an inch. "Come to the ceremony," he said. "We'll open it properly there." I stared at it, throat tight. "What if the board says no?" I asked. "What if they refuse to change the record?" "Then we stand in that courtyard anyway," Bellamy said. "We tell the truth out loud where the walls can hear it. And we give you that medal as his, whether or not some clerk updates a database." He met my eyes, steady. "No act of kindness is ever wasted, Hart," he said. "Not a ramp, not a report written honestly when lying would have kept things tidy, not an old man finally telling the truth in a hospital room." The monitor beeped. Someone's voice floated faintly from the hall. I closed the folder carefully. "I'll be there," I said. Harper nodded once, relief flickering. "Good," he said, "because whatever the official outcome, we're about to drag a sealed chapter into the sunlight. And I think your father would have wanted you to see that." I stood, legs a little unsteady but firm. At the door, Bellamy's voice stopped me. "Hart?" he called. I turned. He held out the coin, pinched between his fingers. "Borrow this," he said, "till the ceremony. Your old man used it when the world got loud. Might help you decide what to stand for when everyone's watching." My lungs clenched. "I can't take that," I said. It's a piece of metal," he cut in. "What matters is the hand that flips it. Besides, if you don't bring it back, I'll haunt whatever ship you end up on next." I stepped forward and took it. It was heavy and warm from his skin, the etched anchor rough under my thumb. "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me," he replied. "Thank yourself. You pushed a chair up a ramp and knocked on the right door. The rest was overdue." Out in the hallway, the air felt different. The coin sat in my palm, solid. For the first time, my father's legacy felt less like a question and more like a road. In 2 weeks, we'd stand in a courtyard with a velvet box and 40 years of silence. Either the institution would bend, or it wouldn't. Either way, I knew this much. His name was coming out of the dark. And I was going to be standing there when it did. The coin became a problem the second I stepped back into normal life. It sat in my pocket as I walked across base, a solid little weight that made every step feel half an inch deeper. I could feel the ridges of the anchor through the fabric when my hand drifted down. Each time my thumb traced it, my father felt a little less like a story and a little more like someone who might turn the next corner. By the time my shift ended, the edges of the folder had softened where my fingers kept tightening around it. I didn't sleep much that night. The barracks smelled like detergent and old air, the climbing heat trapped in concrete and cinder block. Someone's music thumped faintly through a wall, bass just strong enough to vibrate the metal frame of my bunk. I lay on my side, coin in my fist, staring at the dim outline of my locker. Paul Hart, Chief, Breakwater. Dummy in the file, hero in the room. My mind kept playing the hospital scene in loops. Bellamy's coin, Harper's guilt, the shape of my father's signature on that old report. At 0200, I gave up. I reached for my phone and scrolled through my contacts until my thumb hovered over one name I mostly texted on holidays and when appliances broke. Mom. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I typed, "Can you come to base Memorial Day weekend? It's important." The 3 dots appeared almost immediately. "Are you okay?" "I can try." "Is everything all right, Maya?" I hesitated, thumb hovering. How do you tell someone, the man you buried might not be the man the Navy buried? Finally, I wrote, "It's about Dad and the Admiral. Please just say you'll come." A longer pause this time. I could almost see her, sitting at the little kitchen table in the apartment off post, the light over the sink casting shadows under her eyes. "I'll be there. We'll talk when I arrive." I exhaled, long and shaky. The coin dug into my palm. 2 weeks blurred into logistical static. At work, the days rolled in paperwork rhythms, evals, orders, travel forms. The smell of toner and coffee and whatever cleaner the janitorial crew used after hours. Underneath, things shifted. Harper called me into his office once to show me the draft of his petition to the board. Words like correction to record and extraordinary judgment under duress and valor in the face of conflicted orders danced on the page. "This will make people uncomfortable," he said without preamble, sliding the document across for me to see. "Good," I replied before I could edit myself. He huffed a quiet laugh. "Your father would have said the same," he said. I scanned down to the bottom. Signatories: ADM Richard Harper, Laterted, retired, Samuel J. Bellamy. "What's that for?" I asked, tapping the empty line. He looked at it. "You," he said. "If you want it. Next of kin witness. Not required, but—" "I'll sign," I said. He nodded. "After the hearing," he added. "Once we know which way the wind's blowing." I took the petition back to my barracks and sat with it at my tiny desk, the air smelling like dust and takeout. The empty line stared up at me. I traced the edge of it, then set it aside. The night before my mother arrived, I ironed my uniform twice. Not because it needed it, but because it gave my hands something to do. The base housing area smelled like cut grass and grill smoke that evening as I walked to the visitors' lot. The sky had turned a soft orange, the heat finally easing. Mom's old sedan pulled in with a familiar wheeze of brakes. The paint was a little more faded than last time. So was she. She stepped out, smoothing her blouse, her hair threaded with more silver than the last Christmas. The sight of me in uniform did something to her face. Pride, pain, surprise, all at once. "Hey, Mom," I said. "Hey, sailor," she replied, voice soft. We hugged. She smelled like the apartment, laundry, and the faintest hint of the floral perfume she wore only on important days. We drove in silence at first. The base lights slid past the windows, bathing us in alternating pools of yellow and shadow. "So," she said finally, fingers tight on the wheel. "The Admiral called me. Said there was going to be some kind of ceremony." Of course Harper hadn't waited for me to be brave. What did he say? I asked. That he should have called me decades ago, she said. That he owes your father. That things weren't what they seemed. Her jaw clenched. He wouldn't say more, she added. Said it was best heard in person. I watched her profile in the dim light, the same nose as mine, the same crease between the brows when she focused. Does it make you mad? I asked. Him saying that so late? Yes, she said. And no. She sighed. Mostly tired. I spent so long building my life around not knowing. Getting a new story at this age feels risky. We pulled into a small lot near the base motel. The car ticked as the engine cooled. I met Sam Bellamy, I said. He was with Dad, on that mission. Her fingers went slack for a second. Bellamy, she repeated. He sent a letter after, a short one. He died doing what he always did, pulling idiots out of fires. That's all it said. That sounds about right, I said. A small laugh escaped her, then dissolved into something wetter. He always said he'd get himself killed cleaning up someone else's mess, she said. I just didn't think. Her voice broke. I gripped the coin in my pocket. Mom, I said quietly. He didn't screw up. Not the way they made it sound. She turned to me, eyes sharp despite the sheen of tears. What did they tell you? She asked. In your head all these years. That he made a bad call, I said. That he was reckless. That they used him as an example of what not to do. She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them, gaze steady. That's what they told me, too, she said, in more polite words. He deviated from protocols. He exercised poor judgment. Her mouth twisted. And yet, she added, voice hardening, they sent you a check every month and assigned us to housing like they wanted to make sure we didn't ask too many questions. She exhaled slowly. When you enlisted, she said, I was terrified. Not because I didn't trust you, because I didn't trust them. But I thought, maybe if the Navy takes one heart, it owes the next one better. I swallowed. I think they finally agree with you, I said. She studied my face. They told you the truth? She asked. As much as they can, I said. There was a mission. Breakwater. Bad orders. Dad made the call that kept people alive, then signed a report that made it look like his fault so they wouldn't blame the others. Her eyes filled. Of course he did, she whispered. Stupid, brave man. We sat with that a moment, the night pressing gentle and heavy around the car. There's more, I added. They're correcting his record, pushing for a valor citation, a medal he should have gotten alive. Admiral Harper and Bellamy are both backing it. Her breath hitched. Why now? She asked. Because an old man in a wheelchair sent a memo that said I pushed him up a ramp, I said. And because the Admiral finally realized someday turned into 4 decades. She let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. You and your father, she said. Always doing small things with stupidly large consequences. We got out of the car, the cool air wrapping around us. Gravel crunched under our shoes. At the door of the base motel, she paused. If I go to this ceremony, she said, and it all turns out to be some token gesture, I don't know if I can survive that twice. It won't be, I said. I saw the file, Mom, his words, the report he wrote before they edited it. They're using that. They're saying his version out loud. She studied me. You believe them, she said, not a question. I believe him, I said. Now they're catching up. She nodded once. All right, she said. Then I'll be there. As she turned to go inside, she reached out and squeezed my hand. Her thumb brushed the outline of the coin in my pocket. "What's that?" she asked. "His," I said. "Bellamy gave it to me till the ceremony." She smiled, small and sad. "Your father used to wear a groove in our coffee table with that thing," she said. "Drove me crazy. I'd give a lot to hear it again." That night, in my barracks room, I placed the coin on the table next to my bunk. It lay there, dull under the overhead light. I flicked it once. The metal rang against the surface, sharp, clear. For a second, I closed my eyes and let the sound echo. The memorial courtyard sat between two low administrative buildings, a quiet square of brick and stone and scrubby grass. A granite wall lined one side, names etched in neat, unhurried rows. A small fountain trickled in the center, the sound of water masking the distant hum of traffic and aircraft. On the morning of the ceremony, the air was cool, the light soft. The courtyard smelled faintly of damp stone and the sweet green of the hedges. They'd kept it small, just like Harper promised. A few rows of folding chairs, a simple lectern. No giant flag, no band, no protesters. Just the base PAO with a camera slung but idle at his side and a pad of paper for notes. I stood near the front with Mom, the velvet box and the folder in my hands. The edges of the cardboard were warm from my grip. The coin sat against my collarbone on a chain, the metal cold where it touched skin. Bellamy's wheelchair rolled in from the side, pushed this time by a corpsman who knew better than to argue. He wore a blazer over his hospital gown, the coin's absence at his hand making his fingers twitch. Admiral Harper took his place by the lectern, uniform crisp, voice low as he greeted Mom. "Mrs. Hart," he said, "thank you for coming." She looked him in the eye. "I've been waiting 40 years, she said. "You don't get points for punctuality." He accepted the hit. "I know," he said. "I'm hoping to earn a few for accuracy instead." She considered him, then gave a small nod. Kara stood farther back with other junior sailors, hands clasped behind her, eyes wide. Chief Mendez and Captain Weller lurked near the edges, nominally supervising, actually bearing witness. The XO and a couple of other officers I recognized from a distance sat in the second row, faces composed. No one else. No fanfare. Harper stepped to the lectern. The microphone squeaked once, then settled. "For the record," he said, "this is not an official Navy ceremony." A low ripple of amusement moved through the small crowd. "This is something older than that," he continued. "This is men who owed a debt finally paying the interest they've been ignoring for 4 decades. He glanced at Bellamy, then at me, then at Mom. "In 1983, he said, "a mission went wrong. Not because our people lacked courage or skill, but because our leadership, myself included, failed them with confusion and cowardice." His voice didn't waver. "We wrote that failure into the record as one man's mistake," he said. "Chief Petty Officer Paul Hart. We were wrong." Mom's fingers tightened around my arm. "In truth," Harper said, "Chief Hart made the only call that kept others alive. Then he signed his name to a version of events that protected me and Petty Officer Bellamy at the cost of his own career and reputation." He paused, letting the words hang. "We cannot give him back those lost years," he said. "We cannot undo the worry his wife carried, or the questions his daughter grew up with. But we can do this. We can tell the truth out loud and put his name where it belonged from the beginning." He beckoned to me. "Petty Officer Hart," he said, "would you bring the file forward?" My legs felt heavier than they should as I walked to the lectern, the folder in my hands. The fountain burbled softly behind us. Harper flipped it open to the first page and read. He read my father's words, not the edited version. He read the part where Dad described the conflicting orders, the blackout, the collision, the rescue. The casualties weighed against the greater loss he'd prevented. He read the last line. I authorize this report as accurate to the best of my knowledge and accept full responsibility for the choice to prioritize lives over orders. My father's signature sat beneath it, ink faint but defiant. Harper closed the folder. We failed him after this, he said simply. That failure is ours alone. Today, we begin to correct it. He turned to the small audience. By authority vested in me as commander, Naval Base, and in anticipation of formal board approval already in motion, I recognize Chief Petty Officer Paul E. Hart for valor under conflicting orders and for extraordinary moral courage, he said. He nodded to me. Petty Officer Hart, he said, will you join your mother? Mom and I stepped forward together, the grass soft under our shoes. Harper picked up the velvet box. For a second, he just held it, thumb brushing the lid like it might bite. Then he opened it. The metal nestled inside gleamed in the soft light, ribbon crisp, metal unmarred by time. It was the kind of decoration that usually came with long speeches and marching bands. Here, the only sound was the fountain and the distant rumble of a jet. Harper lifted the metal gently. This is long overdue, he said. He placed it in my hands first. The metal was heavier than I'd expected, cool against my skin. Mom's breath hitched beside me. Then he turned, offered the ribbon to her. Mrs. Hart, he said, would you like to place it? Her fingers shook as she took it. I've been wearing this in my head for 40 years, she said. It's time it sat somewhere the world can see. She pinned it to the empty space on the small board they'd set up with Dad's name engraved beneath. The click of the clasp sounded loud in the quiet. Chief Paul E. Hart, Harper said, we stand corrected. One by one, the others rose from their chairs. Not because anyone ordered it, not because protocol demanded it. They just stood. Stand. Kara, Chief Mendez, Captain Weller, the XO, the chaplain, the groundskeeper by the hedge, hat in his hands. Even the PAO, his camera forgotten at his side. And my mother, shoulders shaking but head high. I felt my own back straighten. Harper turned to me. Petty Officer Hart, he said. One more thing. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a smaller box. This is from the base, he said. Not for paperwork, for character. He opened it. Inside, a challenge coin rested on dark foam. New, edges sharp, the metal glowing faintly. One side held the base insignia. The other bore an anchor and 4 words. For courage unseen. Bellamy's breath caught audibly. Harper pressed it into my palm, over the weight of the old coin hanging at my collarbone. You didn't know who Sam was when you helped him, he said. You didn't know what your name meant to him or to me. You pushed anyway. That's the kind of service this place was built on, even when we forget. He stepped back. Wear it or don't, he said. But know that your quiet act knocked something loose that should have moved long ago. The metal warmed under my skin, nested against the older coin. 2 anchors. 2 different eras. Same weight. I looked at the wall, Dad's name freshly etched, the new metal's ribbon a small splash of color in the gray. For the first time, the line next to his name didn't read like a question mark. It read like a sentence finally finished. Behind me, Mom's hand found my elbow. Beside the fountain, Bellamy wiped at his eyes with the back of his wrist, his empty sleeve swaying. Harper straightened, as if a weight had shifted from his shoulders to somewhere it belonged. The wind sighed through the hedges, carrying the faint scent of wet stone and cut leaves. I closed my fingers around both coins and felt, deep in my bones, that something bigger than a ramp had just turned. The ceremony wasn't over, but the story I'd grown up with, that my father died under suspicion, that my name was a warning, was. What came next was ours to write. The courtyard emptied slowly, like people were reluctant to disturb the air. Mom went with the chaplain to talk about the wall inscription. Chief Mendez cornered Bellamy's corpsman and insisted on pushing his chair himself, grumbling about outsourcing respect, while Bellamy made fun of his technique. I stayed where I was, in front of the granite. The metal gleamed against the gray, ribbon neat, nameplate catching small shards of sunlight. Paul E. Hart. No asterisks, no quiet shame. The new challenge coin sat in my palm, cool and heavy. Harper's words, "For courage unseen," echoed in my head. The old coin lay warm against my collarbone, the chain a small pressure at the back of my neck. "You all right?" I didn't need to turn to know it was Harper. His voice had lost its parade ground bark. This one sounded more like it belonged in a kitchen at 0300. "I don't know yet," I said. "I think the rest of my life just reordered itself in about 20 minutes. He came to stand beside me, looking at the wall. "For what it's worth," he said, "it reordered mine 40 years later than it should have." The fountain's water trickled somewhere behind us. A breeze carried the scent of damp stone and cut grass. "I used to walk past this wall and avoid this section," he admitted. "Didn't want to see his name. Felt like if I looked away, the guilt might come with me less loudly." "Did it?" I asked. "No," he said. "Turns out guilt doesn't care which direction you face." We stood there a moment. "You know this won't fix everything," he went on. "There will be people who say I'm dredging up old messes for no good reason. Files will be awkward. Some will argue he still broke procedure." "I know," I said. "But now when they say his name, they'll have to say the whole story, not just the piece that made you comfortable." He let out a breath that sounded a little like a laugh. "You really are his," he said. From across the courtyard, Bellamy waved his left arm. "Get over here, Hart," he called, "before I keel over and miss my dramatic moment." I walked over, the coins bumping together faintly, old and new. He had a small box in his lap, the cardboard softened at the corners, like it had lived in the back of a drawer for a long time. "What's that?" I asked. "A bad idea your father had," he said, "which, for the record, is what most good ideas start as." He popped the lid. Inside lay a strip of photo negatives, dark and brittle. 4 tiny images repeated along the band. "I shouldn't have this," he said. "They told us to destroy anything from that deployment. I forgot." He held the strip up to the light. In the tiny frames, I saw 3 blurry shapes, men on a deck, one flipping something in his hand, all of them laughing.
"Is that?" I started. "Him," Bellamy said. "We were between drills before it all went sideways. He said, 'If this comes out, maybe my kids will see I wasn't always a disaster.'" My chest tightened. "Why didn't you send this to Mom?" I asked. "Because I was a coward," he said simply. "I told myself it would hurt her more, that photos of happy days would feel like salt. Truth is, I didn't know how to write the letter that should have gone with it." He folded the strip back into the box and pushed it toward me. "Your turn," he said. "You decide what to do with it. Maybe you get it developed. Maybe you keep it in a drawer. Maybe you toss it in the ocean and tell him to try again." The joke was thin. The offer was not. I took the box. The cardboard rasped against my fingers. "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me," he said. "I'm just finally handing off what I should have passed on a long time ago." He squinted at my collar. "He'd be insufferable about that coin," he added. "See you wearing it like that." "He already is," I said, touching the outline through my uniform. Mom crossed back toward us, eyes red but clear. She stopped in front of Bellamy. "Sam," she said. "Carol," he replied. They hadn't seen each other since the funeral. For a second, they just looked at each other, two people joined by a man who wasn't there and a grief they'd carried in parallel. "You old fool," she said finally. "You took your time." He winced like she'd slapped him, then nodded. "Yeah," he said. "I did." She put a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you," she said, "for showing up, for not letting them forget him completely." He swallowed hard. "I didn't do enough," he said. "You did today," she replied. "That's a start." Harper cleared his throat. "There's one more thing," he said to us both. "We're updating the base records, the digital ones this time, not just the dusty paper." He nodded toward the admin building. "Anyone who pulls up Paul Hart's name now will see the citation," he said. "The reprimand's getting a note attached, superseded by subsequent review." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "That's a lot of words to say we were wrong," I said. He smiled faintly. "The Navy likes its words," he said. "I figured your father deserved a few extra." Later that week, back in the admin office, I watched it happen. The air smelled like toner and coffee, the printer humming in the corner. Papers were stacked in messy towers on every flat surface. The same chaos, different day. Except now, when I typed Hart, Paul E. into the personnel system, the screen didn't just show a bland service record and a vague note about an incident. A new line glowed on the monitor. Citation: "For valor under conflicting orders, Operation Breakwater." At the bottom, in digital ink, it read, "Remarks. Original findings amended after review. Courage recognized." My fingers hovered over the keys. Chief Mendez leaned over my shoulder. "Looks better that way," he said. "Yeah," I said. "Gonna print a copy?" he asked. I hesitated. Then I hit print. The machine whirred to life, spitting out a sheet. The paper was warm when I picked it up, ink still smelling faintly like chemicals. Dad's name, my name, all the quiet he'd carried, right there in plain black and white. I slid the printout into a clear sleeve and tucked it carefully into the same folder that held his original report. Past and present, side by side. On my lunch break, I took both to the chapel garden. It was tucked behind the chaplain's office, small, private. A handful of benches, a few flowering shrubs, a little stone path leading to a modest memorial rock with a brass plaque. The air out there smelled like soil and something sweet from the blossoms. Bees hummed lazily among the flowers. The bass noise faded to a distant, unimportant hum. I sat on a bench and laid the papers on my lap. The new coin rested in my palm. The old one lay against my collarbone, chain warm from my skin. After a while, footsteps crunched on the gravel. Kara appeared, hands behind her back, posture uncertain. "Ma'am," she said. "Chief said you might be out here." "Caught me," I said. "You hiding from any blinking panels?" She grimaced. "Probably forever," she said. "But, I wanted to show you something." She came closer and opened her hand. A small, round token lay in her palm. Not a coin, plastic, cheap, stamped with the base's morale program logo. Someone had written on the back in neat pen, "Hesitation saved us. E.S." "I started a thing," she said, cheeks pink. "Just between us trainees. We pass these around when someone pauses for the right reason. Not to celebrate indecision, just to remind ourselves that wait can be as brave as go." I turned it over, reading the words. "Echo Shaw will hate the branding," I said, "but the point's solid." "I was going to ask if I could call it the heart token," she blurted, but then I thought maybe that was too much. My throat tightened. It's not, I said. But don't name it after me. Name it after the verb, the act. She frowned slightly. What do you mean? Call it the lift, I said. For whenever you take weight off someone else's shoulders, or keep it from landing at all. Her face lit. That's actually good, she said. I'll pretend I thought of it. You better not, I said, but I was smiling. She glanced at the coins around my neck and in my hand. You think your dad sees all this? She asked. The question would have sent me spinning a year ago, into theology, into doubt, into the old ache of absence. Now, sitting in a patch of sunlight with his name on the wall, his report in my lap, and his coin against my skin, the answer felt less complicated. I think, I said slowly, that the kind of decency he practiced echoes whether he's here or not. The rest, I don't need to know. She nodded thoughtfully. I want to be like that, she said. The kind of sailor who does the right thing even if it doesn't make it into the report. You already started, I said. You hesitated at a panel. You stood up in that tribunal. You asked questions when it would have been easier to keep your head down. She shrugged, embarrassed. Feels small, she said. So did a ramp, I replied. And look where that got us. She laughed. Okay, fair, she said. A breeze stirred the leaves above us. Petals fell, landing on the paper in my lap. Kara looked at the printout. That him? She asked. Yeah, I said. She studied the text. Seems like the kind of guy who'd yell at us if we called him a hero, she said. He would, I said. He'd say he just did his job. And you? She said. What do you call what you did? I thought about days of processing forms, about one morning at a clinic, about a hand on a wheelchair, about all the times I'd stepped in quietly instead of telling myself it wasn't my problem. Same thing, I said. I did my job. The job happens to include pushing when everyone else is busy staring at their watches. She nodded. I'll try to remember that, she said. Next time the world gets loud. She left me there, the garden settling around me again. I unfolded Dad's original report one more time, then refolded it, placing it carefully back in the folder. The challenge coin, new one, for courage unseen, glinted in my palm. On impulse, I stood and walked to the small stone at the center of the garden, the one the chaplain used for unofficial memorials, the place people left tokens when they didn't have an official plaque. The surface was rough under my fingertips, mottled with lichen. I set the new coin down gently on the flat top, right where sun and shadow met. For courage unseen, I murmured. For all of you. Then I reached up and touched the old coin at my collarbone. And for you, I added, who never stopped flipping between what was right and what was easy. My throat burned. I swallowed and whispered, barely audible in the quiet garden, I hope I made you proud. There was no answering voice, no dramatic gust of wind, just the rustle of leaves, the hum of bees, the distant, familiar sound of a bass going about its business, boots on concrete, jets in the sky, lives being lived. It was enough. I picked up the folder, leaving the new coin on the stone, a marker that didn't need a plaque. As I walked back toward admin, the weight on my shoulders felt different. Not gone, but shifted. For years, I'd carried my father like an unanswered question, a blank on a form. Now he was something else. Proof that quiet strength didn't vanish just because someone tried to write over it. Proof that one small act, a report written honestly, a ramp pushed on a hot day,
could echo forward until it shook loose the truth. And proof that no act of compassion is ever wasted. It writes the record others erase. Quiet strength, lasting honor. That was his legacy. Now it was mine to live,